This video is about grief and anger. I sat with my anger long enough and she told me her real name was Grief. This particular chart of mine is from September 19th. That was a Pisces full moon eclipse that we had last fall, and the whole week surrounding it was extremely crazy, and there was a lot of grief expressed as well as a lot of magic happened. So the video here is just going to kind of show some of that. My son and I have been going through a lot for the last 13 months, and there is a lot of anger and a lot of grief over what has occurred. So on this particular day, he and I both had meltdowns, and to control my emotions, I like to sit and chart things. And I wasn't able at that time to make a video, but I had planned to. Venus just moved into Pisces right here on my lacrimosa today, and Mercury, which is my chart ruler, just exited the shadow phase section, from where it retrograded. So Mercury on this day was actually right here in my fourth house, home and family, had crossed over my moon, and it was connecting to Uranus, which, is related to my creativity, and my fifth house here, my children, lovers, also, and to spirit. Like I said, there was a lot of synchronicity going on at the time, but it's opposite my Lamea grief. These are naturally, and so Mercury was making quincunx to it. I call it a karmic aspect because it does, that quincunx always seems to be involved right in the right on timeness of things, but it's also a very hard to balance aspect. So Mercury's also, you can see, opposite Saturn here, and Saturn can be very depressing. My Saturn's naturally in the 12th house, which is a house of mental anguish on top of other things, and Saturn's been going back and forth and messing with me a lot, toughening me up. So let's see. There are many asteroids of grief that I have listed here besides Lamea. There's Melpomene, and Grieve was making an exact T-square to my ascendant and descendant, which is what I came in here to do, and other people. Of course, the moon here had traveled around and was aspecting with Mars. Now, Mars rules anger and frustration, and what was going on at the time was very frustrating. Just so much hitting so much all at once, and it was here near my Melancholia, which is one of the grief asteroids, and this is my Ceres also, who is the nurturer and caregiver. So Mars would also be opposite my Jupiter, which is in the 8th house, and I call it the 8th house of bullcrap. Emotional intensity, transformation, betrayal is a big theme in my life. But Jupiter also, it also rules the magic and the transformation through all of it. So, yeah. Mars is also connecting to my Vesta, which is right here next to my Sun, and Vesta is the caretaker, and Vesta is the holder of ancient sacred wisdom. I don't have it charted here right now, but anyway, So Chiron here, Chiron, the wounded healer, actually retrograded back on my chaos, and we did. Man, it was doctors, and it was really upsetting things going on, and chaos itself has been going through Cancer retrograde right down here, and of course that's connecting to my north node. At that time, it was around 3-4 degrees, and my south node passed, and connecting to my vertex Destiny's Gateway. Now, the problem is we have opposite my vertex on the anti-vertex was nostalgia. So that led to a lot of weeping and tears too. Um, but we go through these hard times in life, and for me, I'm lucky enough I can see what's going on, and even if I were to see it ahead of time, I go, "Oh, I'm not going to cry." It hits you. You can't help it. It does. My progressed chart rising is Cancer, and that moon really messes with me if the other ones aren't. So anyway, let's see. If we go back to Jupiter a moment, transit Jupiter at 20 degrees 40 minutes here, actually making a connection to my midheaven, which is my public life and reputation and highest goals and careers, and to my IC, my emotional foundation. And like I said, there was a lot of magical things going on too. But Jupiter rules the law, and I have some legal things going on, and it rules higher education and therapy. And my son's therapist was very involved at the time. It involves long distance travel, and we were just getting back from a long distance trip where a lot of things occurred that created even more to grieve over. And so, yeah, big stuff going on there. Um, and at 20 degrees 40 minutes, it's still well within orb to this eclipse that we had. Now, the eclipse actually affected my sun moon midpoint, which is a very important point in the chart, where we kind of merge ourselves together with what we're given from our father and our mother, but also what we're here to shine for, and with our intuition, there's many meanings for it. But sitting at my sun moon midpoint is my son's nickname, Malit, which is anxiety. He was given a bunch of new diagnoses, which many were related to our situation. So I don't want to embarrass him at all, but we were both anxious at the time and very sad. And it also connects to Hylanome. Now, Hylanome is a centaur. She's the wife of Chiron, and she is related to grief as the grief at losing a mate in battle. And we have been in a battle of sorts with addictions in our family and them affecting us. So that would also connect to Eris here. Eris is discord for positive change, and it was connecting to this full moon eclipse in Pisces. Now, Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and Neptune in the 12th house, which I have a lot of things here, are related to addictions and mental illness issues, even anxiety and depression. It's related to the subconscious and the metaphysical that I prefer to get into. So, Venus here, transit Venus was connecting to that full moon in that quincunx in conjunct. And Venus is opposite Eris. Uh, very strange things happened that week that just brought up so much. Even finding a rare Indian head coin and getting the test results finally from the spring for my son from his therapist. And uh, anyway, so there was a lot going on, and you can see that it was making a T-square to transit Hylanome, that grief over losing mate in battle, wife is, and so we have that T-square here. Very challenging. And it was connecting to my Merlin, which I didn't write it in, but Merlin is a magic, and I actually was watching Merlin about that time, that 4-hour special that they made back in the 90s, I think it was. I was just drawn to watch it, and there's so much about magic and evil and good, and good turning evil and evil turning good, and very great movie if you've never seen it. But anyway, so it was also connecting to that. Is that all of the 25s? I think so. All right, take a break. Now the thing with Chiron, not only is it on my chaos, it's also on my Niobe. And Niobe is grief over losing the family. And the sun and Niobe were actually conjunct at that eclipse. And it's very powerful. There's a lot of grief going around for everyone. My son's a Leo rising, and it really brought it up for him. And it was making a square to our last name in my chart, and to Uranus. Uranus is the unexpected, it's chaos, it's a lot, and it had just gone retrograde September 1st, so it was still extra powerful in its retrograde motion and connecting to that eclipse, that full moon. Now, Pisces is a water sign and it's extra emotional anyway. So things were just really ramped up. Lots of crying, lots of grief, lots of feelings. And in my son's charts, everything matches up similarly, even though different places still, when you start looking at family charts, there will be a lot of things that match up. So let's see, what else do we have? Now, the 5 degrees, 5, 6 degrees, this is Melpomene, and that's one of the griefs. And it was connecting to Neptune, which of course does rule the Pisces. And the 12th house things that I have here, it's opposite my beer, which is the asteroid of addiction. And right here is actually our house address. My Bacchus is here, and that's the party god. Dionysus actually sits right here with my Venus. So a lot of things to resolve over the different addiction issues, and it actually makes a grand square to my psyche right here, and it affects affects me mentally. It is also something that I have learned to chart very thoroughly, addictions and people, and the way that things can happen and affect others. And a lot of the therapy that I've had to do for myself to learn to set boundaries and to grow through all of this. Not to mention the fact that I've gotten so many hints from wherever, whoever, in dreams and such, to look and chart things. So, psyche is also related to the third eye in psychic senses. So, let's see, my moon here sits naturally across Orpheus, which is haunting melodies. There was a lot of strange, inappropriate music coming on at the time. Not unusual for me with my synchronicities. Hecate, Hecate, Crossroads, the original Trinity between Earth, Heaven, and Hell, or underworld crossroads, and she was a witch, and Hecate was at 29 degrees, and we'll start getting in the 29s and zeros in a minute. But that connects to I have Chiron, Mercury, Eris, that discord for positive change, and Ginky, my childhood nickname, are all clustered here together, along with Indiana and my current county name, and they're opposite Juno, soul contracts, and our town name. So that all connects in too. Now, over here is my astrology asteroids in my first house of self. So down here in transit, we have Lacrimosa, which is another sad, weepy, grief asteroid. My son's nickname and Melancholia are all together in transit. He was really depressed that week, and having a lot of meltdowns, and they were all connecting to transit Malit. And of course, his meltdowns and his inability to handle his emotions affects mine, trying to make everything right, which, sometimes we just can't fix things for other people. But they all connect here to Saturn as well, and Saturn is very depressive. Influence. Let's see. All right, so this is interesting. We have Neptune here, which is the ruler of all my 12th house things here. Of course, my own Neptune here next to the property name or property address. Neptune at 28 degrees 34 minutes actually connects over here to our street name. And our street is also the same as where the therapist's office is. So I actually made a video of my son's chart for his therapist. But Neptune does rule the anxiety and the depression and the reason that we would go to a therapist. So it does rule therapy. And I have it written down here. Let's see. It connects to my grief. It's sitting right here on my grief. Now it's going to connect to anything that's at 29 degrees to 0 degrees and even 1, but I like to keep it within 2. So if we start going around and we look at all the different areas, this is my memoria, which is remembering things. This is transit Sedna here, and Sedna is betrayal by the father. I believe it was Inuit, the Eskimo myth, where she is trying to hold on the edges of the boat and her father cuts her fingers off and her fingers fall down into the ocean and create beautiful creatures. So it's betrayal that turns into something beautiful. And Sedna has been moving very slowly back and is back here on my Mars and Miller. Everything that my son is going through, a lot of it is actually repeating my childhood, which is where the Ginky comes in, because I can see so much and it brings up a lot in me that I'm still having to work through what I can control and what I cannot. So anyway, so we go back here to, it still connects to Uranus, and then Spirit at 2931 in transit is connecting to all of my various 29s, which my Diaretsa is a 0 degree here, which is asteroid backwards, opposite my Pluto at 0 degrees. Hecate was in transit at 29 degrees. And not just my street name sits here. I have a bunch right here at 28, 29 degrees, and that's Neowise, the comet that means new wisdom that came through a few years ago that really got things going. And my karma is there, and my mom's name, who's been very helpful in helping me get all of this information put together and giving me enough hints to go looking for answers. Connects to our last name, of course. And Pluto was still retrograde there at 2946. Right here in Capricorn, it's now at 1 degree. Aquarius. So the astrology right now is actually connecting to the astrology then when I started creating the charts and didn't have time to do it. Let's see. This here is my son's name. He has a nickname, but his legal name. There are 2 different asteroids for it. One of them is Sue, which is why I picked it first, because it was suggested that he be called Sue when I was pregnant with him. And the other one ends in an IA here. Of course, here at in my first house itself. Like I said, he reminds me of me a lot when I was younger. And that connects to my Gagnero here at 1731, 1756. But so his name was also connecting to the chaos, the Chiron, and all the other blue ones here. I have a lot of things here that I'm not, that connects to my sun moon midpoint, going through what my father and mother did all over again. So it does give me a level of understanding for his emotions. Let's see. My Sedna here is at 2 degrees, and Moroso is another one I haven't mentioned for grief. It was at 209. And opposite my Saturn, which I said can be very depressive. I've struggled with depression a lot of my life, and repressing my emotions and my anger with Saturn so close to my Mars. And of course, my Miller is here too at 035. But we just kind of get on with it, because that's what we do. And that's also connecting to Lacrimosa here. Let's see. The Pluto here, I mean, this really is how I have learned to manage handling my emotions and some of the crazy things that happen. You know, and with that Sedna, it's especially important that I do make something beautiful from all the dark that has happened in my life. So Ginky is at 105 here, which I was saying Pluto is actually now directly across where Ginky was. And Ginky's coming to terms with things from her childhood connected to the betrayal. Yeah, so this just kind of gives you a look at some ways. You know, this 29-degree Pisces is a fixed star. I never have looked up how it's pronounced. It's Scheat, fixed star Shate, we'll call it. And that is actually, some say, a fixed star of suicide. It's my dad's son, was 29 degrees Pisces. And he always talked about when he got older, he was going to run his motorcycle into a Mack truck. You know, I heard it since I was a little kid that, you know, he was always talked so openly about just ending everything. So anyway, no surprise once I learned that about that fixed star. But his asteroid from my last name also sits with his sun right there. So that's very fascinating too when I go and study all of his charts. There was a lot of magic from him and stuff at that time too. At that full moon, a whole long list of things happened that week, so it was pretty crazy. But yeah, it just kind of gives you an idea Now, I didn't mention the Epiphany that I have here. I just discovered that one not too long ago, and it was right on time too. Sits here with my Saturn, and that is part of my life lessons because Saturn is in this 12th house of the subconscious, and that's just been part of my path, learning to figure all this out. Is there anything else cool? Let me do a review before I end this. There's always something. That's why I don't end it quickly. So at 6 degrees, I'd mentioned, first of all, beer, the asteroid of addiction. I also have Delphi here and quite a few other things. Delphi was the oracle. Um, let's see, look at my poster chart. My Mars ascendant midpoint is there. My Saturn ascendant midpoint is there. And, oh, Babylon. Yes, Babylon is related to astrology. And a few other things that aren't important right now. But those are opposite my property address in Neptune. And like I said, this is where a lot of magic has happened at this house. This is where I've also had problems with, struggling with the addiction issues in my family, um, and a lot of growth for myself. And that connects to my son's name in transit here was at 601, connecting to all of those, and to the North Node here at 6 degrees 37 minutes. The North Node is our forward path. It goes this direction. And the South Node past was conjunct Lamea grief. So when we look at the the Memoria and the nostalgia, and you got Lamea and the South Node grieving over what's past and what's gone, just all connected together there. I have more 6 degree, 5-6 degrees, but that's enough for this video. And another pause while I review. Well, I thought of something else that's funny because the last few weeks I've had Stitch, the Disney character, also known as 626, has been everywhere for me, and I even sat down and charted it just to see, and I found an asteroid that works, and I put in 66, and it was all right on time. And so it was funny tonight when I was typing this in, and it was 626. I'd even seen a video that the word Stitch shouldn't even have been as part of the title, but it was. But it still applied to my situation. So that was funny too. Now I'll do the pause one more time. Okay, we have Genki in transit here, square to my Memoria, and opposite Pluto, and also square to my mom. I had a lot from my mom and my dad at that time. Uh, squares friction and challenge. This is also when we got the reports of the from the therapist, and so much was going on that I just absolutely could not pick a direction. It leads to that emotional meltdown when it's just too much going on at once and you got to pull back. We can only do so much. So yeah, the 1 degree for Genki was also connecting to a whole lot of other stuff not shown. Big time of growth. I think that's about all I can throw into this. 30 minutes is more than long enough, but it's just important that we remember that when these things do happen, like Genki was connecting to my own Moroso, Melpomene, and my son's name Sue here. When these strong emotions do happen, we just have to remember to take it one day at a time. We're not going to control things. We're doing the best that we can with what we have. Uh, the right things are going to happen at the right time. We have the tools. We just have to stop and focus which can be really hard when we're set in our patterns. And we like to overthink, and we like to pull down to the lower aspects of some of our personal planets. Uh, this 12th house here, you can fall into depression really easily sometimes if you have a lot of heavy 12th or 8th house and, a heavy Neptune or Pisces. It's really easy to fall into it. And if you have I know somebody that has Malit here and just constantly can't even sleep because of anxiety. But this is the house of dreams, dreaming, and sleep. So, it makes connections exactly to that person's Mercury, deep inner emotions. So, anyway, yeah, knowing where some of these are for you and how they are going in transit, you can say, okay, this is just something I'm going through. I'm going to get through this. And that's what I hope to teach people someday. So, I'm going to go ahead and end this, and I hope it was somewhat educational. Thanks for watching.